Hello. Mumsnet. Oh my gosh. Have you been on it? It's terrifying and amusing in equal measure. Um, I don't know. Well, it's got some really interesting stuff. And if you get a topic, a thread with some fairly sane people, then it's great. But you can absolutely get completely done over on there. But it is a good source of reference for things. And I think it's an absolute go-to for the UK government without a shadow of a doubt, particularly anyone interested in education. You will find out in no uncertain terms what people are thinking about education. Oh, by the way, thank you for subscribing and liking to this channel. I see what you think about education. It's not great, is it? Let's be honest with you. Please do keep sharing, because so the reason I talk about Mumsnet is I found some of my posts have been on there, and they've met with mixed feelings. There's a lot of people that agree with me on the education bill. So there's a lot of people that agree that the education bill is taking away our rights as parents. There's an awful lot of people that are very nervous about the education bill and what it says if you're a home educator, and how you will effectively have your rights eroded, and a local authority could decide how your child is educated, whether they have the experience and the knowledge to do so or not. And if you don't comply, you can end up in prison. I mean, that is terrifying, I would say. A lot of people are early years educators. There's a lot of comments on there about the private nurseries situation versus the state nursery situation. Now, I don't know if you remember, but Bridget Phillipson now wants all kids to go to a state nursery. And the way that she's done this is, I think it's another cloak and daggers thing that Bridget likes to do. Well, they all like to do it, don't they? It's not just Bridge. But she's underfunded private nurseries. So she's offered this 30 hours of free nursery early years care. But what she's done is not pay the private nurseries enough. So she's given them a little bit and said, right, give them 30 hours. And the private nurseries have gone, well, we can't. That doesn't cover like 10 hours, let alone 30. And she's like, oh, well, you got to make that up through your own shortfall, your own budget. You've got to find a way to do that, but you've got to offer these 30 hours of free funding. And then, of course, Rachel Reeves has whacked on national insurance. So the net result is that the independent nursery sector are having to lay off workers, which, just so that we're aware, are in the main women. And I think it's astounding that two women have absolutely gone for a sector run by women. Thanks very much, girls. We will remember. But so what's happening in the independent nursery sector is that people are being laid off. There aren't enough staff. And there's not enough places for kids. Well, of course, that's what they wanted, so that they would go in the state sector where they're taking them from 9 months, and their 30 hours of free funding is being met. So the government, whilst it recognises that it's underfunded, and whilst it recognises that national insurance has left a massive hole, the government's bridging that gap. It's subsidising it in state schools. So effectively, it's penalising the independent sector so that goes pop. Bit like, independent education as you get, from junior school onwards with VAT and national insurance. It's penalised that bit so that everyone has to go to state. But of course, there aren't enough places in state. And there are a lot of people already in the early years sector going, hang on, this doesn't suit my child. This might suit you. You might want my child to be in a nursery that's in a state school. I don't. But now, because you've imposed all of these financial constraints on the independent sector, I don't have the choice of going there. So there's a growing group of parents, and Bridget didn't count for this. She wanted it to be the independent sector versus the state sector. That's what she wanted. She wanted a class war. She wanted those sides to hate each other. And she succeeded in many ways. I mean, the abuse people get if they ever admit their child goes to the independent sector, and no matter what, whether it is in nursery or whether it is in further education, is off the scale. I mean, if the shoe was on the other foot, it beggars belief that this is being tolerated, but it is being tolerated because Bridget Phillipson is fueling it. She's giving her tweets about embossed paper and AstroTurf. She's absolutely driving this divide. But now, so what you've got is a private sector which was contributing to the economy and contributing to people being able to add to the economy by going to work. That's now being put under pressure. We've got the state sector, which is effectively indoctrinating your children from the age of 9 months. It's that way or no way. And so on Netmums, I tell you what, it's like a shark's pit. And the thing that I find with Netmums is it's so passionate. And why wouldn't it be? Because these are our kids. These are the most special thing to us ever. And I've talked about the mother wolf before and the father wolf. You attack back someone's child, whether it be aspirationally, practically, whichever way you want, the parents are going to come back at you. And I feel like Bridget Phillipson ought to dip her toe into Netmums. She'd definitely need to go under a different name, without doubt. And she would see the real feeling. Because the other thing that parents have started to notice is this free breakfast club. And they're like, hang on a minute, it's not free, is it? So we've been now for a few weeks and we've seen that the breakfast is not that much cop and we can only go for half an hour. And if it was this charity one, the magic breakfast before, we had like 45 minutes or an hour. But we don't have that now. And we're paying more for it because we're paying out of our taxes to fund these breakfast clubs, but we're also paying our own breakfast clubs at home. We're actually funding our own kids to have breakfast at home. So we're paying twice for breakfasts. Why? Because when it was sold as free, I think people didn't draw the dots together. They didn't join the lines that it's not free. Nothing's free, particularly from the government. It is never free. It's taxpayer funded. So these parents have already paid for it. So when Bridget and Rach are going, well, you're getting £450 a year back, they're going, well, I'm not, because I've paid for it and the breakfast isn't very good. In fact, it's sugary crap. And for some people, don't get me wrong, for some people, it's a lifeline and it should exist for some people. And, you know, you always get the quote, oh, you're so against feeding a child. What is it about you that wants to keep children in poverty? Never have I said it. I've always advocated that children that need financial assistance and support from the state should get it, and they should get way more than they're getting. And it should be done in a way where they are not made to feel in any way an imposition on the state. I hate the phrase free school meals, FSM. I hate it. I do not know why publicly that should ever be distinguished. A child simply goes and gets its lunch, the end. So I'm not saying that children that don't need the help shouldn't get it. But what I'm saying is the rhetoric that comes from the government is completely misleading. None of this stuff is for free. And parents are beginning to go, yeah, no, I've paid for it. I've had to feed them at home because they don't like what they're getting at school and they're spending all of their time playing with their mates and not actually eating anything anyway. It doesn't buy me any more time because it's less time than it was with Magic Breakfast or the Kellogg's Breakfast or the Greg's Breakfast, who have all been booted off site now because state does best. And so it's putting more pressure on me. I'm spending more money. No. And if Bridget were to go on Netmums, well, I think she'd see the real truth. And there's a lot on there from very passionate parents, and damn right. You know, they should have their voice. They should be saying, what have you got to do with whether I home educate my child or not? And how dare you say you want to teach my child grit and resilience? Since when was it up to you to do that? And why do you force us back into the gravy train of work when our babies are 9 months old so that we can try and make ends meet? None of us can make ends meet. And not only can we not make ends meet, we're now not having any time with our family because we've got to work longer and harder to try and get this. I mean, it's like, what is it? The two positives of a negative, and they just push away. That's what the bank balance is like. That's what people are like. I've said this before, you know, day one of payday, it all comes in. Day two of payday, it's gone. And you get back on the gravy train of how are you going to bridge the gap? How are you going to get those two to meet without going boom? And Netmums, I think, in certain areas, if you can wade your way through the shark's pit, is a really clear insight for a lot of people on how they're feeling about what this government is doing. And in particular, VAT on education. The smokescreen is coming off. People in state education are now starting to go, hang on a minute, we've got like another 8 kids in our class, so we're now at 42. We have lost a teacher and our school's having to stop doing certain courses, and we haven't got any more of this funding that she said was going to come from VAT on education. In fact, it's made it worse for us. What? So the penny is dropping, and you know, perhaps better than by people like me saying you should, you know, read this, it's really important. Perhaps actually it has to come from lived experience. Perhaps only when people experience it themselves do they start to go, oh yeah, this is not good. But if you can, if you can, you know, brace yourself, have a look on Netmums. Look, even the dog's wagging. There's a lot of good people on there. There's a lot of good and supportive people on there. There are some scary people on there as well. But you know what? Each to their own, and we've all got to have somewhere to vent, haven't we? And if Netmums is where you do it, more power to your elbow.